This podcast is a quest for well-being, a quest for a meaningful life through the exploration of fundamental truth. Enlightening ideas, insights on physical, mental, and spiritual health. The inspiration is love. The aspiration is to awaken new ways of thinking that can lead us to a new way of being well. Welcome to Body, Mind, and Soul Healing Conversations.
Living from a state of connection to our deepest self can help us to think, feel, speak, and act in more skillful ways. Individually, we can learn to trust our innate wisdom to overcome patterns of behavior that no longer serve us. This can help improve our relationships with family, friends, coworkers, and ripple out to our communities and the wider world around us. Valeria Teles interviews Mike Jenkins, the author of The Gift of the Present: How to Experience More Peace, Joy, and Happiness Through Present Moment Awareness, and Practicing Present Moment Awareness video series. Mike began exploring spiritual practice with a voracious zeal after a diagnosis of cancer at the age of 29. In 2010, he began to experience more profound changes in his perception of himself, others, and of life, and began writing about this on a blog. He has given talks in Leicester, Yorkshire, Lancaster, London, and Brighton, recorded dozens of videos on YouTube, was interviewed on the popular spiritual awakening video series Buddha at the Gas Pump, and has written many articles and short eBooks. Mike currently hosts regular weekly and monthly present moment awareness group sessions on Zoom, offers private guided sessions for individuals, and shares articles, eBooks, and MP3 meditations on his website. Meet Mike at heartofpresence.co.uk. Here's the interview with Mike Jenkins.
My guest is Mike Jenkins. So in your own words, who is Mike? And what is the purpose of your work, Mike?
First of all, it's really great to be joining with you. And we should probably say as well that when I first spoke to you on that first podcast interview that we did back in November, we kind of had the idea for these conversations. So we'll be talking, about that as we go along. So for anyone who doesn't know me, my name's Mike Jenkins. In 2010, I started writing a blog about my spiritual experiences. And before that, I was very deliberately seeking for some kind of freedom, actually, from feelings. I think that's relevant to our conversation because the reason that I was seeking in that way, I wanted to be free from difficult feelings. I'd suffered in my 20s. I had some mental health problems when I was a student. My 20s were very difficult. I worked as hard as I could, but nothing ever really went smoothly for me. And in my late 20s and through my early 30s, I was dealing with a diagnosis of cancer. So those were years that were physically challenging as well as emotionally and mentally and everything else. So all of those experiences really, like they do for millions of people, all around the world, we as humans, we don't seem to be able to avoid inevitable suffering. And some people suffer intensely, and in ways that you and I just can't contemplate, and others suffer less so. But it does seem to be, like the Buddha says, life is suffering. There's no escape from that. Those years that I was writing the blog and going to teachers and reading hundreds of spiritual books and trying different spiritual techniques and well-being techniques. And so I was trying everything, but I realized that I was trying all of that because I wanted to feel less pain.
Yeah.
I wanted to feel free from either the feeling of wanting and craving, like, that feeling that nothing's quite right, there's something missing, I've got to change my job, I've got to change my relationship, I've got to change my body, I need more money, or I need less money, or I need to live in a different part of the world, or actually it's nothing to do with me. Other people need to change, my family, my mother, my children, my husband, my wife, they all need to change. I'm fine. It's actually the politicians need to change. So whatever it is, we all experience discomfort, on many different levels. And so I think that for lots of people, that is where a spiritual search can begin. And it was much of that early experience for me, and particularly with meditating as well, which we'll come on to, because that's really what I do at the moment, is I share present moment meditations with people, and I simply guide them and myself through a few short meditation techniques, rather, which lots of other teachers have shared. In particular, Eckhart Tolle talks about silence and stillness and space. And I use that a lot in my guided meditations. And then I also talk about awareness of awareness. However, when I first started to encounter those teachings, I was listening to them from the point of view of, oh, yes, this is the key to freedom. And there was a part of like our sort of egocentric, separate self listens in on that, and it makes a deal with ourselves and says, yeah, well, if I put in all these hours of spiritual practice, if I go to that teacher, if I read that book, I will reach my idea of enlightenment. And usually that means I'll feel better. I won't feel the things that make me feel bad, but I will feel the things that make me feel good. So I'll feel more blissful. And all of that's true. We can experience all of those things. It's just that, like you say, and I love the way you introduced it, is that there actually is no escape for us. The job of being a divine spiritual being is happening here in our human bodies. This is where we work it all out. And I think that you're right, that is beautiful, because in the end, we actually don't really want to be free from our human suffering. We actually just want to navigate it better. We want to rely on the deeper part of our being, the deeper aspect of who we are, to dance with it, So I think what I've found is that certainly through these practices, that there is an aspect of who we are that is already perfectly okay with the hardest feelings. It's already accepted them, and it can't be destroyed by them. It can't be hurt by them. And that ultimate aspect of who we are, divine emptiness, or we could call it emptiness, we could call it Buddha nature, we could call it the Tao, we could call it the now, we could call it anything, non-dual reality, pure potentiality. That can't actually die, and it can't be born, it just is, So I think that's what's interesting about that journey for me, is that I was seeking really to escape the feelings that were problematic for me. But the irony is, the only escape really is right into them. We were talking about that. So it's actually okay. Yes, it's okay to feel all this stuff, because it's not actually just me that feels it. There is something more here than just me. Right. There is non-dual reality. There is Buddha nature. There is silence. There's not only feelings here. There's also the consciousness that is aware of the feelings, which means that there is awareness and feelings. They're appearing together and disappearing together. And somehow, when we experience that in our bodies and we feel it, it seems to actually heal and make those experiences easier to bear.
So what would you say for those who they are in the midst of their suffering and they are embracing every feeling as if they were not just real, because they are real.
They are real, relatively, yeah.
Even for me, I have this understanding, which seems to be an ongoing kind of deepening experience, right, Mike? Yeah. It's not a destination. What would you tell them, in this moment? Yeah, what would be your offering?
Yeah, if I was, face to face with someone and they were sharing something that they were feeling, obviously it would depend on the context and what's actually happening. So in some instances, I don't know, if I was faced with somebody who was in the street and they were, it was a very severe, they were injured, or, you're in in a way, those are kind of theoretical. You don't know how you're going to react until in the moment. However, if someone's saying to me, look, I just can't cope with these feelings. I mean, that's quite a common experience in our modern world. We feel overwhelmed. We've all experienced kind of simultaneous experiences of feeling overwhelmed, confused, uncertain with the experience of the pandemic. But, those feelings are quite common to us anyway. We felt them during childhood. So I think the main thing I would say is that's okay, first of all. Is it okay to feel like that? Who says that you're not allowed to feel like that? It's okay to feel that way. And secondly, is there something here in your own experience that is aware of how you feel? And therefore, is that awareness suffering in that way? So first of all, I might say, well, what is it? Name the feeling. So explore it. What's it look like? Witness it. Look at it. Is it fluttering anxiety? Has it got a shape? What might you call it? It's nervousness, or it's fear or panic, or I just can't drop certain. There might be thoughts that come up, repetitive, whatever it is. But after a while, we can notice that we have the ability to stand outside of it and to name it, observe it, look at it. So really, it's about coming to recognize that there's a part of you and a part of me that can see what we're feeling, can witness it, can be aware of it. And if we spend more time simply just looking at our ability to be aware, which is why I take people through silence meditation, because that's not so wordy, and we can just say, oh, listen. And in that listening, there's usually a feeling as well, just dropping down, a sense of just being here, breathing, the feeling of the body, just sensation of here and now. And so what I think I have found helpful is to make the connection that vast empty space or pure silence, which seems to be able to hold anything, I think it's the same dimension as our awareness, or it certainly seems to have very similar characteristics, because anything seems to be free to come and to go in silence. So in the silence, we can make lovely sounds, beautiful choirs, nice music, and we can make unpleasant sounds, the sound of cars screeching or sirens. They seem to be free to come and go. The silence itself doesn't seem to be marked by those sounds. It seems actually completely just as it was before they came and after they've gone. I try and point people, and this is only because it's worked for me, and there are lots and lots of really great writers who probably do this far better than me, and some great teachers. But in a way, it's like we can understand it conceptually, but when we feel and we know it by being it, it's like something drops. We start to realize we become more and more trusting and familiar with the fact that, oh, right, actually, it never really goes anywhere. That awareness, I mean, we call it awareness. It's really simply there's something in our own conscious experience of this moment that is at the same time experiencing what we feel and simultaneously free in it. Like you say, it's freedom in all these things. There's a sense of, well, the core of what I am isn't actually suffering. It's witnessing the suffering. And so somehow that's freer and seems more manageable than, well, all there is here is just this pain and suffering, which for some people that is their experience, and we can't deny it. That's just how they're experiencing reality at that moment. But we all know that almost everybody I've ever met has had those moments when the only thing they're aware of is intense, restriction or suffering or pain. And so that's our reality in that moment. And those moments are horrible. We've all had them. And then, as our grandmothers said to us, time is a great healer. Give it some space, give it some time. It seems to be that these dimensions that aren't really very, the dimension of space is not particularly esoteric. It's in every room we're in. The space around the objects outside of the room. It's actually very ordinary.
I love the way you describe that. The first thing that caught my attention in your teachings when we talked for the first time, it was the silence. When you use silence as a metaphor for consciousness, for this undescribable, nameless reality that we can't access but at the same time, we can't. It's such a beautiful paradox. So what I wonder is that because of the body, Mike, that we have the experience of time and space, and also the fear? There's a lot of fear that comes with the attachment to the body, right? That this idea that we are the body. So would you say that the anchor to this reality, that it's not real per se, would be the body, and fear is the let's say, the carrier of that reality that keeps kind of perpetuating itself? From what I heard, it keeps coming back in a sense of in a new body, mind continuation and all. So is that the reason why this reality exists? Because we are not ending fear here now?
I'm not sure. I don't actually know. I don't know the answer to that. But what I do know is that fear comes and goes.
Right.
It's part of the deal. It comes and goes. And so the important thing to hear there is that it goes.
Yeah.
You know? And it seems to be that, so yeah, maybe this sense of being, solid, we're in our bodies, what I do think is that our kind of practiced conditioning of the actual practice of being a separate egocentric self. Egocentricity is, I think, best described as the feeling experience of feeling that I am at the center of the world.
Right.
It's egocentricity. It's at the center. So the feeling of I'm at the center of the world and everything is happening around me.
Right.
That seems that when we act from that perspective, we do act from fear. Because if I'm here and the world's happening around me, then it's happening to me.
Right.
And it's like, I've got to control it. I've got to manage it. Like it's all. Whereas I think when we simply listen to this moment, when we stop thinking, another way that people practice this with particular techniques are mantras or ways to just calm, to just allow the mind to like quieten down, then we seem to sort of merge with the now. We seem to realize we may not even notice it. I think most people spend quite a bit of time in present moment awareness. They're simply just not consciously aware, but they are experiencing the benefits, because they're more relaxed, riding a bike, doing the dishes, driving a car, walking, staring out the window, listening to music, daydreaming. You're kind of in those moments, you've stopped thinking so much. You're just being, you're just bumbling along, and so therefore your body's more relaxed. You benefit from all of that much more. Like when we sleep at night, when we're in that deep or dream state or deep sleep, then we're benefiting from no longer feeling like we're this tight ball of stuff at the center of the universe.
Right.
So I think it's certainly something to do with that simply noticing that we're appearing alongside the silence and that everything's happening now, it can have the effect, I think, of decentralizing and dislodging egocentricity so that we actually start to recognize, well, I'm not the center of the universe, actually. And that's quite an intelligent way to live, because then we're in more communion with those around us. We're more in touch with spiritual wisdom. So, yeah, I think that it's related, that feeling of constriction and time, actually. I suppose it is, because when we're lost in a daydream, or we're sitting in silence and we're just very still, our perception of time changes.
Right.
So like we all have that experience, don't we? That when there's not very much happening, 5 minutes can seem like a really long time. But it seems to be when there's lots of things happening in a short space of time, and there's probably a very good physics answer to it, also I don't know, but there's that phrase, a week is a long time in politics.
Yeah.
I think that's because so much happens, so many big events happen in the political world in 1 week. It seems like it's a year's gone by. And these days, it's like times a million. I think that our perception of time does change based on our point of focus. So in a way, I think you're right. I'm just not sure I can describe it very well.
Yeah. Thank you for your honesty. This idea of freedom, is that something that is it's a practice? It sounds like it's a practice to me.
Well, maybe. Maybe it is. But again, it depends what we mean by the word practice. It's essentially something we do over and over again. I guess I would describe freedom as just something that's happening. You know, it seems to be that freedom is what's happening when we're not doing very much.
Right.
Like it just is.
Everything is free already.
Yeah, almost like, you know, you could describe that primary identity of ourselves, you know, what we are before we're a body is freedom. And so therefore, there must be an aspect of us that is also freedom. So I might say that freedom is taking form in this moment as Mike and as Valeria. It's taking form as all the objects. Freedom's doing that simultaneously, all at once, right now. It's almost like freedom is what is, and we are appearing and disappearing in that freedom.
What comes to you as an answer? What insights have you gained into why this is? Because it doesn't have to be, right? The conditioned body and mind that is not free, but the aspects of us that are not free. Do you ever ask that question? Like, how did this come to be? Why this is? Why the conditionings are?
Well, I have asked that question, and we can come up with different theories.
True.
Yes. And different kind of ideas about it. I think ultimately we can't really know. We might say, you know, it's a bit like, why is anything happening at all? You know, why does, you know, emptiness turn up as universes and create? It's like, well, one theory might be that it's just another way to play the creation to play. You know, it seems that, you know, I mean, there are other people that might say, you know, the humans are having this experience in order to expand reality, you know, and then all of it is really an experiment in evolution. But it seems it can also be an experiment in devolution. It doesn't necessarily have to go one way. So I don't think it's wrong to have theories or ideas about that. I just sort of think, well, if it's helpful, I find it interesting to talk about. It's like metaphysics, really. It's fascinating. But in a way, it's like communing with the spirit world or manifesting, or it's like, well, we can do all that, but, you know, is it serving us you know, right now? You know, is it actually, is that any different to playing cricket or watching Netflix? You know, I mean, it's like, is it serving us right now? And some of that is, some of those activities are of great service to us and to others. And some of them, I think, can be just as much a distraction as worrying about what the stock market's doing, or, you know, thinking, you know, is my hair looking all right? You know, it's like some of it can be a distraction, I think, you know, and some of it isn't.
That's a very good answer. So it's to ask those big questions. They are very entertaining to me. Like, I love reflecting upon them and having conversations. I love that for some reason. When it goes back to the idea of freedom related to conditionings, then has to do with practice, being in the moment, which takes practice, and that's another paradox because it takes effort, right, Mike?
Yeah, I think you could say that on the one hand, it does take effort. It does take an intention, if you like.
Right.
But the paradox is that it might take an intention for us to just stop and look. But funnily enough, when we just stop and we're just being, that's effortless. You know, when we just notice that, well, perhaps what I want or need, is it already happening? Is it already here? It seems that that's the moment when we realize, oh, well, that itself didn't take any effort at all because it's already happening. So it is a paradox. But, you know, it's like we were saying last time, we do practice things in our daily life. If you think of practice as just something you do over and over again, you know, I mean, I still have plenty of bad habits that I do over and over again, and they're not necessarily very good for me. But, you know, I've just got into a habit of repeating them. Whereas there are certain ways of thinking and being that I don't do so much anymore. So therefore, I don't have the negative effects of them, you know. Right. So, for example, my response to anxiety or fear is different now than it was when I was in my 20s, you know. So I kind of rely on a kind of deeper wisdom, which I don't really think of as my wisdom. You know, it's like, well, if it was down to me, I'd probably screw it up. You know, but actually, I recognize that there's an aspect of me that is, you know, an aspect of you and me that knows far better than I do. You know? And there are times, I mean, I grew up in not a very strict Catholic family, but I did grow up with being taught about God and Jesus and the Bible, and went to a school where we went to mass each week, you know. So I did grow up with that. So sometimes it feels comfortable for me to ask God, or ask Jesus, and so no, I've got Buddha statues in my home. I seek the guidance of Buddha, or I ask archangels, I might ask a dead relative to guide me in any moment. Those things feel comfortable to me. But then it's like, well, if that's so, I'd say to others, if that feels meaningful to you, then do that, because there seems to be actually a relief when we're like, oh, actually, yeah, thank God it's not all down to me, because it allows us to be fallible and human, accepting that if I alone, can't handle a lot of the difficulty of life, but actually these years of practice, and the reason I say returning to it is because when I first noticed this, it felt really powerful in the moment, but then I'd get sucked back into identifying too much with suffering, too much with my ideas about things, my stories about things, and getting trapped in it, and then reacting to it. This is a nightmare. Why won't it ever get better? When's it going to improve? So I kept thinking, well, how can it be really free 1 minute and then the next minute? And I think it was simply because I kept forgetting.
Yeah.
I kept forgetting that, well, hang on a minute, actually, maybe it's more okay than I think, I just do it whenever I get lost.
Right.
And I still get lost in thought and feeling now, I think it's really hard not to, that we're all part of this. The teacher Adyashanti has a brilliant phrase where he talks about the vortex of suffering. He says, and sometimes that vortex can turn so powerfully on a planet, on our planet, that actually even really, really practiced meditators and people who are really skilled at staying can get caught up in that, because collectively, we're all here together. I think it's quite comforting to hear that, because we can so often think that we're not doing so well because, I still get caught up in feelings. Well, actually, yeah, but that's all right, because we're still in a body.
Right. And everything's connected, as you said. There's this interconnectedness. You said something powerful. The idea of control, that we have control of our own lives, that we are here doing this alone. And is that part of that egocentric kind of reality where we are in the center of the world and everything's happening around us?
I think so. And it's also, it's the human story. It's the human condition. It's like, it's not such a radical idea. Most people would actually prefer to believe that than to believe that they're not in control,
Yeah.
That's fine. That's where those people are at that time. I think if most of us went to our doctor or our clinician and said, I actually feel fine because I realize that I'm not in control of anything, the doctor might go, are you sure you're all right? But then you can go to a priest and say that and say, I feel such a relief because it's not down to me. The priest will say, that's wonderful because it's down to God. So much of this is just about paradigms and language and context. And, for me, what I think is the most important thing at this stage in my experience, and why I think it's so good that you're doing this series of conversations about the freedom to feel, is that, like, it's okay for us to be a human mess. We put so much pressure on ourselves as people to be perfect, to be, to do all the right things. And it's like, well, it's okay to suffer, to get it wrong. It's okay to be confused or frightened, in the same way that we would say to children, like a good kind of nurturing parent would say, well, that's all right. It's okay.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter. The feelings will go away. You don't need, it's all right.
That's true.
It's almost like that. That's the feeling I get from silence. I sit in silence, or I notice space. It's got that free aspect of, the ability to stand back and witness. But the deeper part of it is really very, very loving.
Yeah, it's true.
It's unconditionally accepting. It's unconditionally loving. And it just seems to consistently exude, it's okay. There's nothing I can't hold for you. There's nothing that can harm me. And that's kind of really, I think it's healthy. I think it's when we can begin to feel love in ourselves, in our body, we can feel the emotion, the movement, the word emotion, I think, means disturbance. But actually, when we feel lovely feelings, like when we put our arms around someone we love, or we stroke a pet, science already knows that chemically, in terms of our nervous system, it's really healthy. And so we've all spent such a lot of time feeling isolated.
Right.
And the reason I started sharing these on Zoom is because I wanted to connect with others in that field of connected, open, unconditional now acceptance, love. That's not the love that preferences or decides, I approve of. It's like the love that just kind of allows all of this stuff to be.
We're almost at the end. Wow, you went by really fast. Another question I have for you is about meditation. Can the practice of meditation happen in motion? Like some call it active meditation.
I think it can. My teacher who taught me much of what I know was a teacher called Frances Bennett, and she sadly passed away in January. But she said, and I think many other teachers would say, surrender, allowing things to be, flowing through life. Surrender is meditation in action.
Ah, wow.
So we can have formal meditation practice where we are, in a way, we're sharpening our skills to recognize unconditional openness, or we're recognizing witness consciousness.
Wow.
We can deliberately sit and go, okay, so today I'm going to sit for 10 minutes and I'm just going to notice and just going to listen to silence. In a way, we're developing our familiarity. We're returning again and again and again. And so it's almost like we sharpen our skills in that way so that when we go out into the world and we come across a situation which would be very much, aided by an open-hearted approach, theory goes that you practice enough that then it becomes the most obvious way to respond. A bit like if you practice self-defense, you go to classes and you practice self-defense, those movements in your body, you've got the physical memory in your body, so that then life is our meditation. That actually life is the meditation. And some teachers say, I think this is a wonderful phrase of saying it, that we can realize that life is meditated. We are life's meditation. We are the meditation of God. It's just being itself through us, that's really lovely when we feel the reality of that. It's mind-blowing. It's like, wow, yeah, what a great thing that life's meditating by being all of this.
Right.
We are life's meditation. The world is life's meditation. So in that sense, I think we can take that practice into the world. And then it's just our way of being. We're just being that way. And I think that's something that naturally then arises from, surrender. I like to call it surrender, but we could call it allowing wisdom to flow. I think then all of those great qualities that are in all of the brilliant spiritual traditions of compassion and kindness and forgiveness and expressions of love and care and all of that sort of thing, they seem to arise naturally from that state. So if we encounter somebody that's suffering, our compassionate heart feels called to assist in some way, to help, to heal, to reach out.
What a beautiful message. Talk to me a bit more about surrender. And you just actually mentioned the signs. We are dancing that dance with life, emerged back into this, this natural stream, natural way of being. Then kindness, love, everything that is considered good kind of arises. So, but is that something that can be measured in the sense of, do we look for that confirmation from the external world? Or this is something that we all know, we have that knowledge within, and it doesn't have to be shown, or if you know what I'm trying to say.
If we just pay attention to what's happening right now, so turn your attention to your breath, just entering and leaving your body, the feeling and sensation of sitting on the chair, thoughts coming and going, feelings in the body, images, the sound of my voice, the silence. Maybe there's a ticking clock or a plane overhead or a dog barking, whatever it is, just noticing what's happening now. It's all coming and going. There's an aspect of this moment that is already completely surrendered. It's completely open. It's not, the moment itself isn't holding on, doesn't need to. So the breath is coming and going, thoughts are coming and going. Nothing in our kind of relative experience stays the same. It's all in constant flow, some of it's fast, some of it's slow, the rock in the garden, or a solid piece of rock, a solid mountain, is moving much, much slower than the particles in the air, but it's, or dust motes or whatever. But it's still, geologically speaking, I think it's moving. It's the atoms inside of it. So there's nothing that's not freely flowing. And so that's what we can feel and sense, that openness, that clear, empty space. That's surrendered. It's open. It's not holding on. So it's beyond really our concepts of surrender or resistance. It's like, well, is there an aspect of this moment that's already completely open and surrendered? Doesn't necessarily mean, I think the concept of surrender we think of as I've got to give up.
Right.
I've got to do that. I've got to give up. I've got to lay down. But actually, it might mean that we stand up and we fight. That might be surrender, because what's happening is that there's an aspect of this moment that is allowing everything to come and go. So it might mean that surrender for some people might mean we surrender our passivity. We surrender the patterns of letting people walk all over us. That might be something that we drop in our own development or our own understanding, so.
How interesting how we try to find the truth. We try to find the answers, and everything, it's here now. It was never hidden in the first place.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Mike.
Well, thank you. And can I just say thank you so much for organising this. For anyone watching on live or on the replay, there's a lot of work that goes into this, and Valeria's done all of that. So I'm very, very grateful for you, for the opportunity to talk to you and to share this with your subscribers and on your channels. And I'm just so glad that we met and we've had these exchanges. It's been really, really nice.
Yeah.
It's been great for me, because I've needed to let go of the part of myself that says, oh, I can't do that. Who am I to go out there and tell people about things? My life's a complete mess. Why would anyone listen to me?
Oh my God, I love your message. I love your message. It really touched me the day we met and you talked about silence, and it was felt in a profound way. And that's why you're my first guest with this live conversations. You came to me strongly. So thank you. And as for your appreciation, the body appreciates. The body really loves hearing that, because it's the only part that sometimes complains. Nothing else. And I do have a last question for you, Mike. What is one message from our conversation that you wish everyone to understand and to take with them for the rest of their lives?
I think that would be, there is something here. There is a part of you. There is an aspect of your own being that can hold all the things you think you can't, and that can face all the things that you feel you can't. There's an aspect of who you are that is already free.
What is the best way to be in touch with you, to find more about your work and your offerings, your services? Besides the Fit for Joy, of course, website.
Besides, yes, absolutely, yeah. So you can read, the best way really is through my website, which is heartofpresence.co.uk. So if you visit that, you can see what I'm doing generally in terms of events or Zoom meetings. I'm also on Facebook. I think the Facebook page is Heart of Presence. And in particular, at the moment, I'm really keen to share with people my 4-part video series, which for some people may be more practical than coming along to the live Zoom events, So the 4 practices that I tend to share with people, I do a weekly meeting group with some people here in the UK. I've shared in person recently at some live events. And once a month, if anyone wants to come along and experience this guided practice, then you can come along on the first Tuesday of every month at 7 p.m. UK time. That's free to join. The link is on my website. But if anyone wants to start exploring this practice, then you can purchase the video course. And I go through, each video is about maybe 40 minutes long. And I go through those practices in depth: silence, space, stillness, and awareness of awareness. And people then can go at their own pace. They can play it back. And I just suggest to people, do it whenever you've got time. And also, once you've watched the videos or you've been to one of the meetings, then do it when you're sitting, listening to people, sitting on the train, drinking your coffee, walking in the park. Just bring that. It's a perspective, really. I think it's a shift in perspective. And that shift from the perspective of egocentricity to the perspective of pure, open-hearted awareness, that shift seems to bring about a change in the way we perceive ourselves, a change in the way that we perceive suffering and life that is just altogether different to what goes before, which is usually much more pain and resistance, and therefore suffering for everybody, not just us individually, but just look at the world.
So true. I love your work. Thank you so much, Mike, for doing what you do.
Thank you. And thank you for arranging it. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you for listening. To learn more about Mike Jenkins and his work, please visit heartofpresence.co.uk. Also, practice present moment awareness and reconnect with the freedom to feel in your own time and at your own pace with Mike's 4-part video series for a limited time only. Fit for Joy is offering a 30% discount. Simply enter FIT4JOY0522. Click Validate and your discount will be applied. heartofpresence.co.uk/video-series.
To learn more about this podcast, please visit fitforjoy.org/podcast. Thank you again for listening, and bye for now.